Have you ever noticed like how the term dark it seems to be kind of losing its impact, especially when it comes to fantasy and romance?
Yeah.
We're going on a deep dive today to try to figure out why that is.
Yeah.
We'll be looking at a YouTube video essay from the Unwanted Book Club that really digs into this topic. It's called Why Are We Labeling Everything Dark? And let me tell you, this YouTuber has some
interesting takes.
Yeah, strong opinions.
It is fascinating to see how the word dark has almost become like a marketing tactic in some genres.
It's like a buzzword, right? Promising something edgy and intense.
Right.
But then the story doesn't quite live up to that expectation. The YouTuber brought up A Court of Thorns and Roses as an example. For those unfamiliar, it's a popular fantasy romance series that features enemies to lovers and morally gray characters, elements often associated with dark themes.
Right.
But the YouTuber argues that those elements are often softened or redeemed as the story progresses. So the initial darkness is kind of undermined.
That's a really interesting observation. By redeeming characters or romanticizing their flaws, the narrative might be shying away from fully exploring the complexities of those darker elements. It makes you wonder if authors are sometimes hesitant to commit to a truly dark narrative, maybe because they're concerned about alienating readers who prefer a happier ending.
That makes sense. It's like they're dipping their toes into the darkness, but not fully diving in.
Yeah.
And this kind of ties into another point the YouTuber made about the overuse of the Beauty and the Beast trope, particularly in romance novels.
Yeah.
You know, the beastly male love interest.
Oh, yeah.
Who turns out to have a heart of gold. It's a classic, but it can get a bit predictable.
Well, the trope can definitely be done well. I agree that it does sometimes risk becoming formulaic. The YouTuber actually contrasts those popular examples with Hades, a retelling of the Hades and Persephone myth.
Oh.
In this version, Hades' character isn't softened or redeemed, which creates a potentially more intriguing power dynamic.
That's a great comparison. It shows how different authors approach these classic archetypes and how those choices can affect the overall tone and complexity of a story. And speaking of classic archetypes, the YouTuber also discussed the differences between dark fantasy and what they called grim fairy tales. Basically, the argument is that modern dark fantasy sometimes loses the true darkness and grittiness found in traditional fairy tales. They use Shadow in the Glass, a darker Cinderella retelling, as an example of a story that retains the consequences and moral ambiguity of the original tale.
Grim fairy tales are fascinating because they weren't just about violence. They explored much darker themes like poverty, abuse of power, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. They served as cautionary tales, often with bleak endings. So when modern retellings try to soften those elements, they might lose some of that raw, unsettling power that made the originals so impactful.
I can see that. It's like the difference between a sanitized version of history and one that confronts the harsh realities head on. Now, this next part is where the video takes a bit of an unexpected turn. The YouTuber dives into the world of comic books, specifically the popular and often controversial relationship between Joker and Harley Quinn.
Yeah. What the YouTuber highlights is that despite the toxicity of their relationship, Joker and Harley Quinn resonate with audiences because there's no attempt to redeem the Joker. He remains a villain, and their dynamic, while unhealthy, reflects a certain rawness that some viewers find compelling.
That's such an interesting point. It's like there's an appeal in seeing that unfiltered darkness, a relationship that doesn't try to sugarcoat the villain's true nature. But then the YouTuber contrasts this with Birds of Prey. In that film, Harley finally breaks free from the Joker, embarking on a journey of self-discovery and growth.
The comparison is quite clever because it raises questions about what audiences are drawn to. Are we looking for escapism where the bad boy is redeemed? Or are we yearning for stories that acknowledge the complexities of toxic relationships and the potential for breaking free?
Right. Do we want the comfort of a familiar trope, or are we ready to confront the messier realities of human relationship? The YouTuber seems to be advocating for the latter, suggesting that true dark storytelling should delve into those uncomfortable truths without shying away from the potential consequences.
That resonates with the point you made earlier about authors potentially being hesitant to commit to true darkness. The YouTuber explicitly expresses a desire for stories that explore the darker side of human nature without simplifying or sugarcoating it. And this leads us to another example they brought up, a book called The Gray Series.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about The Gray Series and why the YouTuber sees it as a strong example of dark storytelling.
So The Gray Series, it's about a woman's descent into madness after falling for the wrong person. And it dives deep into the psychological impact of manipulation and those blurry lines between love and obsession.
Whoa, that sounds intense.
Yeah.
And completely different from the redeemed bad boy trope we were discussing earlier.
Yeah.
What was it about this book that resonated with the YouTuber? What made it stand out as a truly dark story?
The book really delves into the protagonist's psychological unraveling. It doesn't shy away from depicting those manipulative tactics the love interest uses to isolate her and warp her sense of reality. It also explores her own vulnerabilities, which make her susceptible to manipulation. That's what the YouTuber found so compelling. The book's willingness to confront those uncomfortable realities without trying to offer easy answers or a simple redemption arc.
That makes me think about the consequences we were discussing earlier. In a lot of stories, even those labeled dark, the characters often escape the full weight of their actions, especially if they're attractive or charming. But in the Grey series, it sounds like the protagonist is forced to confront the consequences of her choices, even if they're painful or destructive.
Exactly. And that's where the discussion about the meaning of dark becomes really interesting. It's not just about including violence or disturbing imagery. It's about a willingness to explore the depths of human experience, even the parts that make us uncomfortable. It's about acknowledging that actions have consequences and that not everyone gets a happy ending.
That's a point that really resonated with me from the video essay. There's a difference between surface-level darkness and a story that genuinely grapples with the complexities of human nature. It's about more than just shock value. It's about exploring the gray areas of morality and the darker impulses that drive us.
This focus on realness in dark stories ties back to the Joker and Harley Quinn example as well. Their relationship, while toxic, reflects a certain honesty in its portrayal of dysfunction. It avoids the romanticized redemption arc often seen with the bad boy trope.
That's a great connection. It's like we're craving stories that acknowledge the messy reality of life where people make mistakes, relationships can be destructive, and not every wrong can be easily righted. It's not always comfortable, but it can be incredibly powerful and thought-provoking.
Absolutely. And this brings us to another important point. The role of consequences in dark stories. True darkness often involves characters facing the repercussions of their actions, even if those actions are morally ambiguous. It adds a layer of realism and complexity that can be incredibly compelling.
It's like we're yearning for stories that reflect the weight of our choices, the idea that we can't always escape the consequences even if we regret them.
Precisely. It's not just about punishing characters. It's about exploring the nuances of human behavior and the gray areas of morality. Sometimes the most compelling stories are the ones that leave us questioning who's right and who's wrong, and whether there's even a clear answer.
It's about embracing the ambiguity and complexity of life rather than trying to force everything into neat little boxes. Speaking of pushing boundaries, let's circle back to the Grey series. What were some of the specific elements that the YouTuber praised for their exploration of the darker side of human nature? I'm really curious to hear more about what made this book so impactful.
Well, one thing the YouTuber highlighted was the book's unflinching portrayal of manipulation. It delves into the insidious ways abusers can isolate their victims and distort their perception of reality. The book doesn't shy away from the psychological impact of such tactics, the way they can erode a person's sense of self and agency.
It's a stark reminder that darkness can exist even in the most seemingly ordinary settings. It's not always about monsters or supernatural forces. Sometimes the most terrifying monsters are the people closest to us, those who exploit our vulnerabilities for their own gain.
Exactly. And that's what makes the Grey series so effective. It takes a seemingly familiar premise, a young woman falling in love, and twists into something dark and unsettling. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable reality that manipulation and abuse can happen to anyone, anywhere.
That's a message that's incredibly relevant and important, especially in today's world. It's a reminder to be aware of the red flags in our own relationships and to trust our instincts when something feels wrong. So if we're craving more stories that embrace true darkness, where should we look? What are some other examples from literature, film, or television that you think capture this essence authentically?
There are so many great examples out there. In literature, you could explore the works of Shirley Jackson. Her novels like The Haunting of Hill House and We Have Always Lived in the Castle delves into the unsettling aspects of human psychology and the darkness lurking beneath seemingly idyllic settings.
I love those books. They create such a chilling atmosphere and really get under your skin. They're masterclasses in psychological suspense. What about something a bit more modern?
If you're looking for something more contemporary, you might enjoy the novels of Gillian Flynn, Gone Girl, and Sharp Objects are great examples of stories that explore the complexities of female characters and the dark secrets hidden within families. And these stories don't shy away from portraying violence and its impact on individuals and communities.
Those are excellent suggestions. Now, what about film and television? Are there any directors or shows that you think excel at capturing this authentic darkness? I'm always looking for new recommendations.
Film. Well, in film, you could check out the works of David Fincher. His films often delve into the dark underbelly of society and the twisted psyches of his characters' Seven, Fight Club, and Zodiac are all prime examples of his signature style, exploring themes of obsession, violence, and the search for meaning in a chaotic world.
I'm a huge fan of David Fincher. His films are so visually striking and psychologically intense. You mentioned Fight Club, which is a really interesting example because it's not just about physical violence, but also about the rage and alienation felt by men in modern society. It really taps into that sense of disillusionment and the desire to break free from societal norms.
That's a great observation. Fight Club definitely challenges conventional notions of masculinity and explores the darker impulses that can arise when individuals feel lost and disconnected. It's a film that provokes a lot of thought and conversation, which is a hallmark of truly impactful storytelling.
Absolutely. And speaking of thought-provoking television, I'm a big fan of Breaking Bad. It's a show that follows a seemingly ordinary man's descent into a life of crime, exploring the moral compromises he makes and the devastating consequences that ripple outward. It's a slow burn, but it's so well crafted and suspenseful.
Breaking Bad is a brilliant example of a show that embraces the complexities of his characters, refusing to shy away from their flaws and the darkness they're capable of. And it's not just about the protagonist's journey, it's about the impact his actions have on those around him, the collateral damage of his choices. It's a masterclass in character development and moral ambiguity.
And I think Mad Men deserves a mention as well. It's a show set in the 1960s that explores the dark undercurrents of that era, from sexism and racism to the hollowness of the American dream. It's not always an easy watch, but it's undeniably compelling and thought-provoking.
Mad Men is a brilliant example of a show that uses a specific historical period to explore universal themes of ambition, identity, and the search for meaning in a world that's constantly changing. It's visually stunning with incredible attention to detail, and the writing is sharp and insightful. It's a show that rewards multiple viewings because there's so much going on beneath the surface.
These are all such fantastic examples, and I appreciate you sharing your recommendations. It's clear that there's no shortage of stories out there that embrace true darkness, exploring the complexities of human nature and the world around us. The key is to be open to exploring different genres and styles, and to be willing to challenge our own comfort zones.
I love that perspective. It's about pushing the boundaries of what we consider entertainment and seeking out stories that engage with the world in a meaningful and authentic way. And it ties back to that desire for realness that we've been discussing. We're not just passive consumers of media, we're active participants, seeking out stories that resonate with us on a deeper level and challenge our perspectives.
Exactly. And that brings us back to the YouTuber's central argument, that the term dark has become somewhat diluted, losing its original impact. It's not just about surface-level darkness or shock value, it's about a deeper engagement with the complexities of the human experience.
It's about embracing the shadows alongside the light and acknowledging that true beauty often lies in the imperfections and the unexpected turns that life throws our way.
Beautifully said. And that brings us to the YouTuber's final point, the idea that we have the power to demand more from the stories we consume and create. We can choose to support artists and creators who are willing to delve into the depths of human experience and challenge our perspectives.
We can choose to be more discerning readers and viewers, questioning the labels we encounter and seeking out stories that resonate with us on a deeper level.
And perhaps most importantly, we can choose to be more honest and courageous in our own storytelling, embracing the complexities and contradictions that make us human.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the evolution of the term dark, I want to circle back to a question the YouTuber posed at the end of their video essay. If you were to write a truly dark story, what uncomfortable truths would you dare to explore?
That's a great question to reflect on. It really challenges us to think about what dark means to us personally and what kinds of stories we're drawn to, both as readers and viewers, and as potential storytellers ourselves.
It pushes us to move beyond surface-level interpretations of darkness and delve into the heart of what makes a story truly impactful and unforgettable. What resonates with us on a deeper level, what stays with us long after we finish reading or watching.
Exactly. So let's take a moment to recap what we've explored in this deep dive. We started by questioning why the term dark seems to be losing its meaning, particularly in genres like fantasy and romance.
We examined how dark is often used as a marketing tactic, promising a certain level of edginess or intensity that the story itself doesn't always deliver. We also discussed how certain tropes, like the Beauty and the Beast, where the beastly male love interest is ultimately redeemed, can sometimes feel like a missed opportunity to explore more complex and challenging relationship dynamics.
We contrasted those examples with stories like Hades and Shadow in the Glass, which offer more nuanced portrayals of characters and their relationships. And we even took a detour into the world of comic books, analyzing the appeal of Joker and Harley Quinn's toxic relationship, and how it contrasts with Harley's eventual journey of self-discovery and independence.
That led us to a broader discussion about the audience's potential desire for stories that delve into the darker aspects of human psychology and relationships without shying away from uncomfortable truths. We explored the Grey series as a powerful example of dark storytelling that explores the descent into madness and the consequences of falling for the wrong person.
Throughout our conversation, we've been challenged to consider what truly constitutes constitutes dark storytelling? Are we simply looking for surface-level thrills, or are we seeking out stories that engage with the complexities of human nature and the world around us?
The YouTuber's video essay encouraged us to be more discerning readers and viewers, to question the labels we encounter, and to support artists and creators who are pushing the boundaries of storytelling.
It's been a fascinating exploration of the evolving meaning of dark and a call to action to be more thoughtful and intentional in the stories we consume and create.
So, as you continue exploring the vast world of stories, whether through books, films, television, or even your own imagination, keep that question in mind. If you were to craft a truly dark story, what uncomfortable truths would you bring to light? What shadows would you dare to explore?
What impact would you hope to have on your audience? Happy reading, watching, and reflecting.